Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 216 of the Falcoholic Live. I am your host, Kevin Knight, at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by my co-host, he is Adnan Ikic, at Say Which Way. Adnan, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well, ready to, well, it's not, I was gonna say ready to get into the second half of the season, but we have one more game before we get into the second half, right?
Yep.
Uh, this will be week 8 already.
hmm
God, it feels like it's just flown by at this point, but yeah, ready to get back to 500 with a win in division play this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is an excellent chance to get back to 500 against the Panthers, but we did just see the Panthers play the game of their collective lives against the Bucks, and that upset. So maybe can't take the Panthers as lightly as potentially first thought, but we'll be getting into that a little bit tonight. Also joining us for that adventure, among others, is Aaron Freeman at Falc Fans on the Twitter, host of the Locked On Falcons podcast. Aaron, how are we doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Glad to be back on, especially now after a loss, so that I can spew my usual hatred towards the Atlanta Falcons.
Yes, this works out much better for you, I think, this week. So we'll be
Yeah.
sure to indulge your dark side. That I know you can't stay you can't stand talking too positive. So I
Yeah.
know there were too many positive takes in the last show. So we'll make sure to balance out that juju tonight with plenty of well deserved negativity. No, no, the Falcons did not obviously win in Week 7. It was a difficult watch, but they're funny enough. I think like people are sort of taking the wrong conclusions from the game, and I think Aaron, you maybe feel similarly, but the Falcons did lose 35-17. That was their first blowout loss of the season, coincidentally coming after their first blowout win of the season. So at least they're consistent with the last 2 weeks being blowouts. It was a tough watch. The secondary, obviously very injured, but did not cover the Bengals very well at all. They got absolutely obliterated early in the game. They did manage to recover in the second half a bit and only allow 7 points, but the damage had already been done. They'd given up 28 points in the first half, and the Falcons' offense just couldn't seem to get out of its own way. The run game actually struggled this week, which is not something we're used to seeing. And they managed just 17 points, all of which came in like the last 2 minutes almost of the first half. So it was a complicated game. There was a brief moment after halftime where it looked like the Falcons had a chance to potentially climb back into this game. I think they had basically two drives after halftime where it was 28-17, and you put a touchdown on the board there. Bring it back to a 4 point game. Everything is back in contention. We're rolling, and they went 3-and-out both times. And then, of course, the Bengals got back on the scoreboard and put this one completely out of reach. So let's start with Aaron as our valued and special guest this evening. I'll let you sort of lead the way. Where do you want to start with dissecting this game? I know you just finished your film review of it. I actually didn't get around to finishing mine because I was totally slammed yesterday. So you probably have a little bit more of an in-depth look, but I'll let you lead the way to wherever you want to sort of start the discussion on this blowout defeat in Week 7.
Where to start? Yeah, it was tough for the Falcons defense. I think a lot of people, it's easy to kind of chalk it up as they had injuries in the secondary, and that was the reason why the Bengals were so effective throwing the ball against them. And that, I think that certainly was a contributing factor, but I don't think that's the only factor. It was basically just like the only, I think the injuries only really impacted the Falcons on the rare instances where they played man coverage. And basically in those instances, Joe Burrow was like, I'm just going to throw it to Jamar Chase because nobody can cover him. And even if the Falcons had been healthy, I still think he probably would have done the same thing. And,
Yeah.
maybe he wouldn't have scored both touchdowns or whatever, but like he still probably would have had a big game. And so I don't know if the injuries in the secondary are that consequential to their struggles on defense. I think a lot of it was they weren't able to provide a lot of pressure up front, which has always been the sort of Achilles heel for this Bengals offense. And I think the Bengals really did a thorough job attacking their zone coverage, particularly early in the game when the Falcons were playing their cover 2. That first touchdown to Tyler Boyd was, they split the two safeties deep. Richie Grant fell down on that play. And the Bengals, most teams have been playing cover two against the Bengals, and the Bengals basically at this point in the season, as we saw on Sunday, have basically made the correct adjustments to it and put in a whole lot of plays that were really picking apart the Falcons cover two and that stuff. So I think that's kind of what the defensive game plan kind of boiled down to. And when the Falcons play bend but don't break defense, and the whole point of that is we will concede like the 4 and 5 yard gains. And you saw that mostly work in the second half. But it completely breaks down when you're giving up, 20, 30, 40, 60 yard plays like the Falcons were giving up left and right, particularly in the first half of the game. And so that was their problem. And then obviously, a lot of the discussion this week has been about the Falcons offense and its inability outside of basically one play to really do anything worthwhile this past Sunday. And so I'll concede if Adnan wants to sort of take that point from this point on. So
sure, Adnan, why don't you you watch the game too, Adnan? If there's anything you want to add about the defense, or you could just take it away with a critique of the offense, which honestly I think the offense is the more disappointing performance in this one, because I think we all sort of expected the defense to get blasted, especially once AJ Terrell went down. So what are your thoughts there, Adnan?
I mean, there's getting blasted, which, they were. In fairness, it was practice squad guys covering arguably the best wide receiver trio in the league right now. If not, I don't even know if there's too much argument. Chase, T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd are a hell of a wide receiver core that they've put around Joe Burrow over in Cincinnati. But there's also giving up 537 yards of total offense, which is just a ridiculous amount, no matter what the circumstances are. And it could have been, I feel like it could have been even more. Joe Burrow had over 350 yards and 3 touchdowns in the first half. It was just it was just a pathetic performance overall. And I'll give the defense some credit. They locked down a little bit and gave the offense a chance to get back into it, especially after the offense had those quick scores. And, shout out to Avery Williams for that good punt return to set up the field goal before the half. But moving into the offense, despite all of the struggles, I think the offense was down the team was down 28-17 to start the second half. The defense got, I think, forced a punt. They got a stop, a 3 and out, and the offense went 3 yards and punted it back. And then the defense gets another stop, and then the offense again goes 3 and out and gives the ball right back. And I think it's just a testament to just how severely limited the offense is, to the point where even though you're down by 3 possessions throughout almost the entirety of the afternoon, Marcus Mariota attempts 13 passes. I don't think you can play in the modern NFL against better teams and just be so severely limited in your passing attack. The Falcons right now are rushing at a rate seen in the fucking 1940s. It's like don't get me wrong. I love the ground and pound. I love when it works. I know exactly what they're going for. They're trying to manage the clock, make things easier for the defense, limit mistakes. That's fine. But when the other team completely jumps on the defense the way that they did, this team looks absolutely helpless when trying to come back. And I know it almost happened against the Bucs, but the Bucs have their own issues to worry about on offense. The Bucs aren't looking very good either. And against the Rams, I know that they had that near 28-3 comeback, but that was completely spurred by that punt return, which was or that pump block, which was recovered for a touchdown. It was spurred by some incredible individual plays like the Darren Hall forced fumble. This offense just isn't built right now with Mariota to come back, because they're just not they're just helpless through the air. And I think I think it may be time to consider a quarterback switch, and just to possibly raise your ceiling a little bit, because right now this offense, they have no ceiling when they go down. It's all just run game, run game, run game, and that can work against a team like the Browns, where they didn't have 3 of their 4 starters on the defensive line, against an injured 49ers team where you jump on them to start, you get a defensive recovery for a touchdown. If this team takes the lead, they're golden. But as soon as they go down, it's just you can pretty much write them off.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's been very limited, and part of the problem in this game, like I guess maybe I'm in the minority, like I don't think that the fact that they ran, like that they had to run, was a problem in this. I think the problem to me was that they just didn't do anything well. Like they had 2 drives after halftime. They were down 11 points. They're down 2 scores. They have several drives. They could run any plays they want. They could run the ball. It's right after halftime. You got like the one good thing about being down big like early is that you have a chance to claw your way back without really having to do anything crazy. You have a whole half. And the problem is they just go 3 and out like 3 straight times. They don't move the ball at all. They only had 47 plays in the entire game, which is not enough to do anything really. They didn't sustain any drives. They went 4 of 10 on 3rd down, which is not the worst, but to me the biggest issue here is that you just didn't do anything particularly well. They really struggled on 1st down in particular. It seemed like they just couldn't get positive runs going on 1st down, and that put them sort of behind the sticks. And maybe that's more of the thing, right, with this offense, is like if they get into consistent 3rd and long situations, it's very difficult for them to complete those against a good pass defense, which is what the Bengals are. I mean, to me, I'm just disappointed. This Bengals defense gave up over 200 yards on the ground to the Saints a week ago, and they were out Logan Wilson and DJ Reader in this one, as well as their backup nose tackle. And the Falcons barely moved the ball on the ground. They had that one drive where they did well, and then they couldn't really get much going after that. And I think that is maybe where you see more of the limit, which is if the Falcons can't run the ball, like they're not successful doing it, then the offense can't do anything right. So, I guess however you frame it, whether it's like they can't pass or like they can't do anything if they can't run, like that sort of thing, that's been sort of, I think, the Achilles heel of this team. And we only really seen it twice against the Rams and now in this game, where they weren't able to really get much sustained success on the ground. And I guess you hope that Patterson coming back helps with some of that, but maybe this was just an off game for the run blocking. I mean, I didn't think the run blocking was particularly good in this one. But the passing, it's like 13 attempts is like comically low in terms of passing attempts. Like, I mean, it's like Joe Burrow threw it 42 times and they were leading the whole game. Like, it's clearly there's something going on here when you're only throwing the ball 13 times. And I think that's sort of what you guys are getting at. And Aaron, I know you have strong takes on the Mariota situation. Adnan, it sounds like you might have some strong takes too, but it's when he's been
Not
able
as strong
to
as Aaron's, but
Yeah,
not as
yeah.
strong as Aaron's, but I think I'm getting there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's weird how crazy things swing in 1 week, right? Because last week it was like, oh, well, will we see Ritter at all if Mariota keeps having weeks like this? And then 1 week later, it's like, oh, like when are we going to see Ritter again? So, I think, Aaron, you've always been sort of like, well, when are we going to see Ritter? Regardless of his NFC Player of the Week performance 2 weeks ago. But where are you at right now with the, I don't know what we should call it, the Ritter clock or something like that. But, do you think that it is really Mariota holding back the passing game, or is it more complicated?
I think it's somewhat Mariota holding back the passing game, but at the same time, I don't necessarily blame Mariota for basically being the quarterback that he's always kind of been. So, like, I don't know if it's fair to really expect Mariota to do that much more than what he's doing. I think he could certainly do a little bit better than what he's doing, but like, I don't know if, like what we saw against the 49ers, I don't expect him to play that well every single week. I think it's going to be somewhere below that level, but probably above what we've seen in some of his weaker games this year. And so for me, and I was talking about this today on Locked On Falcons, which was that, like, I'm not ready to pull the plug on Mariota at this point in time. I'm willing to give him a couple more weeks to see if there is any progress, if this passing game can be a little bit more functional and he can play closer to what he played like against the 49ers. And if he does, then I think, that will be, enough for him to potentially retain the job, assuming that the Falcons are winning games and are competitive in all those games, which I assume they will be. And if he's able to do that, then, he should be able to hold on to the job. But if that's not the case, and the Falcons, we're still basically having these same conversations about how limited the passing game is 3 weeks from now, and he's not really doing a whole lot to help the situation, then I do think that makes the most, from my perspective, you kind of need to make a change to see if, Ritter can give you a little bit more. Maybe he can, maybe he can't, but I don't think you'll know until you try. And I think the hope with Ritter coming in is not going to completely revamp the Falcons offense, but maybe he's going to be a little bit more capable to give you those sort of efficient games like we saw Mariota do against the 49ers a little bit more consistently moving forward. And when I look at the offense, I think a lot of it, and Kevin, we talked about this a little bit on Twitter, I think a lot of it is the offensive line. And when you look in the second half of that game, the offensive line gave up 3 sacks, and pretty much any time where the Falcons tried to go to a 5-man or 6-man protection, they got beat by the Bengals pass rush. And the Bengals have a good pass rush, but by no means is a dominant unit. And it just seems like, I think the thing that's forcing Arthur Smith to rely so much on the running game is he does not have any confidence in the Falcons offensive line. And I think the conversation needs to be had that while they've made significant improvements as run blockers, I think you can make an argument that they are marginally better than they were a year ago as pass protectors, as a unit. And I think the other factor I noticed, I was looking at next gen stats, and the Falcons have run against 8-man in the box, like I think on like 60% of their runs the last couple of weeks. And that's a really high number, because I remember when like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt were leading the league in that stat going into that Browns game in week 4. Theirs was like 30% or something like that. And traditionally, run success correlates more to how many defenders are in the box. Like there's data that suggests that your ability to run the football is more linked to how many defenders are in the box than your running back's ability or your offensive line's ability. And part of me wonders, given teams like the Bengals and others that have been loading the box as of lately, are we going to see a downturn in this Falcons running game compared to what we saw earlier in the season? And going back to your point, Kevin, if that's the case, does that mean that we're going to see more games like this where when the Falcons can't control the ball and control the line of scrimmage, will their offense cease to function? And so that goes back to the Mariota point, where it's like, if he can't give you more than what he's giving you, then I think the case can be made that you can look at another quarterback like Desmond Ritter and hope that he can give you that thing. But again, I'm willing to give Mariota a couple more weeks to figure this out.
Yeah, and I think it is complicated too, and I think that's what people need to understand, is that it's clearly the passing game is limited for multiple reasons, and if you can't admit that Mariota's responsible for some of them, I think there's an issue there. Like, I think it's pretty clear that he has some weaknesses. Like, to me, it's not necessarily, I don't really think it's an arm strength thing or really just an overall accuracy thing to a big extent. I think it's mostly something that confuses me, because on some plays you'll see Marcus Mariota react so quickly, like on the botched snaps, on plays where something goes wrong. He's really good at like finding a way to make a positive play out of those really chaotic situations. But then when you put him in a situation where he's got pressure coming and he needs to get the ball out quick and you can't afford to take a sack, he doesn't seem to see the field quickly. He doesn't seem to to me, the biggest critique I have is that he's not really willing to throw the ball into tight windows. And I think when you've got players like Kyle Pitts and Drake London, you need to like take chances just getting the ball to them, especially in third and long. Like, Drake London doesn't need to have 3 yards of separation to catch a pass. Neither does Kyle Pitts. Like some of these guys, you just got to chuck it to them. And I feel like part of the reason the pass attempts are so low is because Mariota is not willing to throw it into those tight windows. He doesn't see guys coming open super quickly. I don't think he reads the field particularly well. But he does offer you that really good rushing ability, and the Falcons have sort of been bailed out, I think, by that on numerous occasions. His play under in chaos has bailed them out as well, and he's clearly capable of making some good throws. Like I think maybe we might see the deep game start to come together a little bit more here. That was a nice play to Damiere Byrd, obviously. If you want to point to something and say like, oh, they finally hit that deep shot that they've been trying to hit all year, and it worked great, and that was obviously a very nice play, but the fact that they're only calling, they're calling less than 20 passing plays on a given week is definitely an indictment of the coaching staff's belief in Mariota to helm an effective passing game. It's also something to do with what Aaron was saying about this offensive line. I mean, look, we've talked about it. It's basically the same offensive line except for Elijah Wilkinson, because Drew Dalman was here last year. He could have played. And to me, I don't know if everyone agrees, but to me, the biggest liability right now is actually Drew Dalman at center. I know, Aaron, you're probably going to agree with that because you're very happy with Caleb McGarry-Island. So, you can't slander McGarry-Island. It's just got that 4-star renovation. It's trying to get back to 5, so you can't slander it. I understand you're contractually obligated not to, but I'll give Adnan a chance here first. Adnan, what do you sort of see as the biggest weakness on the offensive line at this point in the season?
I mean, I think it would be too simplistic to just say that, yeah, their pass blocking is leaving a little bit to be desired. And I feel like the coaching staff has done a good job of masking that by going so run heavy. But like Aaron said, other teams are really starting to adjust to that. And, at some point, they're just starting to dare the Falcons to start beating them through the air. Not at some point, it's already started. He gave us that stat about how many 8-man boxes Atlanta has been having to deal with. And I don't know. It really is just a culmination just of a bunch of small things. I don't think there's any like one silver bullet you can fire off and change. I know I was making it seem like that by talking about the possible quarterback change. I think that could help the team a little bit, but overall, I don't think that this is an issue with the offense that they're really going to figure out this season, because the offensive line is what it is with their pass blocking. I think it's not going to be fixed long term until you bring in better pass blockers, until you bring in, maybe a better center, a better guard. Maybe the answer is shifting from Dahlman back to Matt Hennessy, seeing what he has after an offseason preparation, seeing if he can be a better pass blocker than he was last year, which he was pretty dreadful last year as a pass blocker. But I don't know. The frustrating part is there's no one thing and there's no series of things that you can really, change right now. All you can sort of do is try to, continue giving the offensive line more help with those chip blocks, keeping the tight end in, which I get that the fantasy community especially is very upset about Kyle Pitts doing more blocking and less catching. And, they're calling for Arthur Smith's head on a spike to be delivered to them because, their precious tight end 3 that they ranked before the season, not playing as well as they thought he would. But yeah, it really is a tricky situation. And this is just one of those fundamental core things of this roster is, at the end of the day, one of the worst rosters in the league. I think that's to be expected. They have $77 million in dead cap, which is it may be an NFL record for one season. Their highest paid player against the cap right now is Matt Ryan. Their second highest paid player against the cap is Julio Jones. Neither of those guys are on the team. And that's what impresses me even more about this team being at 3-4 and having a chance and having the chance that it does moving forward. The coaching staff has just done a great job sort of squeezing blood out of a rock, and they did so last season against taking advantage of a worse schedule. Like last year's team was not a 7-win team. I don't think that this year's team is a team whose roster reflects a 3-4 record or a record of a team that's in the hunt for an NFC wildcard spot. So I think at the end of the day that this really just is a fundamental roster issue with this offense, and the coaching staff is trying to do everything they can to mask it as much as possible. But now other teams are just adjusting to it, and now it's all about trying to adjust to those adjustments. And maybe that adjustment is trying out Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's a good line of discussion. I do want to get to some of these donations because we just had like 6 come in. So before they stack up, let me get to those and remind people, please do like and subscribe. Also, we really appreciate that as well. We got Jason Gaines with the $2. He says the Falcons should go sign Janoris Jenkins. I think he would really help the secondary. It does sound like Kevin King is planning to sit out this year as he recovers from injuries. Also, for fun, we could go bring back Trufant, Robert Alford, and Brian Poole because they're all free agents. Yeah, get the band back together. We will talk about corner and some potential signings, trade stuff when we get to that more like trade deadline sort of discussion. So we will definitely talk about Janoris Jenkins as an option. Ray Moon with the $5. Thank you so much, Ray. He says, despite Mariota's limitations, still think first-year adjustments should be taken into consideration. That being said, if when we get mathematically eliminated, Ridder should start. Yeah, I think all that's fair. Like what we were all saying, like Mariota, it may take him time to get used to the offense, and every quarterback should be given like a little bit of an opportunity. But yeah, I mean, obviously, if they get mathematically eliminated, I think we'll see Ridder like as soon as that happens, if not before. But yeah, I think it's very likely we will see Ridder just because I think they need to know one way or the other what they have with Desmond Ridder. All right, we got Jason Gaines with $2 more. Thank you so much, Jason. He says, feel bad for Matt Ryan. Yeah, we're going to talk about Ryan, of course, as well tonight. Jim Irsay flat out lied to him. That Colts O-line is horrendous. Jonathan Taylor, outside of one game this year, did absolutely nothing. Feel bad for DW and everyone over at Stampede Blue. They got screwed. Yeah, I mean, hard to name a more disappointing team, maybe the Broncos, than the Colts this year. Interesting that both horse teams are underperforming. But yeah, I mean, I feel bad for Ryan. We'll definitely talk about him tonight as well. And then George Costanza, I'll get to his $1 tip first because it's relevant to the poll I just posted. So George wants to know if I actually did do the math on how much he's donated. I have done the math, and he wants me to save his other question for the end of the show. So I'll be sure to get that later, George. Thanks. All right. So thank you guys for those. If you guys have questions, the link to that is in the show description, streamlabs.com/Falcoholic, thefalcoholic/tip. Yes, and you can vote in the poll if you think George Costanza has donated over $1,000 or under $1,000. So I have looked it up. We will reveal that shortly. So this is mostly an excuse for me to try YouTube's new poll system. So, but you know, it's fun, right? It's engaging. Okay, back to the Falcons discussion. To me, I agree with you guys that it is a complicated issue. I don't know. I'm trying to determine like long-term what the plan is here, because I do think next offseason is likely to be like the offseason of the trenches, or at least I think we all sort of hope it is. Like finally they're going to invest in the trenches, you know, with veteran signings and draft picks and all these things. And right now, like I said, I think the weakest point is at center with Drew Dahlman. Since he's such a young player, you're maybe hopeful that he continues to grow over this season, and maybe it's not, you know, something that's a problem by the time we get to the end of the season. Maybe he's adjusted better. And then you have offensive tackle, mainly right tackle and left guard, that are maybe the other spots you consider. Just briefly looking at free agency, we talked about this during the Q&A, like the tackle class, the offensive tackle class, looks a lot better, I think, than the center and guard group, in my opinion. But tackles tend to be the most expensive, also, so that's something to keep in mind. But I know we got Adnan's take on this on Monday night on the Q&A. But Aaron, we haven't heard from you. Right now, would you be giving McGarry an extension? Would you be tagging him? Would you be letting him walk? Where are you landing halfway through the season on sort of the status of McGarry in free agency next year?
Well, I also talked about this recently on Locked On Falcons, and I'm disappointed,
good plug, yeah.
Kevin, that you did not.
Apparently I missed it. Wow, yeah.
But it was on today's episode, I think. So if you didn't listen to the All 22, you missed it. But basically, I kind of said that McGarry, I would be willing to sign him to like a sort of cheaper 1 or 2 year contract, similar to what like Trent Brown signed with the Patriots this past offseason. I think he got like a 2 year, $13 million deal. But it's a deal that the Patriots could get out of after this season, after 1 year. And I feel like while McGarry has played well, given that he's going to be 28 in February, I don't feel like the Falcons should be long-term committed to him. And if they have an opportunity to upgrade and replace him with a high draft pick, with a guy that could potentially be, the short-term right tackle and potentially be the long-term left tackle, should, the Falcons look to replace Jake Matthews in a couple of years, that would be kind of ideal for me. But at the same time, I do think this upcoming free agent class is not great along the offensive line. I do agree with you that the tackle group does look slightly better than the guard group, because the guard group is basically Elton Jenkins and that's it. And technically, I guess he's a tackle now. And he'll probably get franchise tagged. So I don't see him hitting the market. And so it's basically like Jack Conklin and Mike McGlinchey. And neither of those guys are like great tackles, but like Jack Conklin obviously had a lot of success playing right tackle in Tennessee. Mike McGlinchey is a really good run blocker, and maybe not hold the whole Matt Ryan thing against us because that's his cousin. But it's not a great pass protector. He's basically like Caleb McGarry, like this version of Caleb McGarry, like the competent version of Caleb McGarry is what Mike McGlinchey is. It's not like you're making a massive upgrade there. So how the team addresses the offensive line this offseason is going to be fascinating to me, because like, I think you look at this starting five, if they were to run it back with this starting five and they say, we're going to run it back with this guys, like I would get it. Like I wouldn't be like, oh, this is a terrible move. Like I was saying last offseason when it looked like they were running it back with last year's starting five.
Yeah.
But like, I feel like you cannot put too much confidence in this group moving forward without real improvement, particularly in pass protection over the course of the rest of the season. And so if you're going to run it back with the starting five, then I would really like to see this team invest significant resources in the draft on the offensive line. And if they're not willing to do that, then I would like to see them be aggressive in free agency to try to find multiple upgrades, or at least bring in competition for some of these guys that they might retain, and use that as a way to upgrade that group. So as you say, the offseason of the trenches is going to be fascinating, because I feel great about the direction of the D line, because I feel like there's so many really good players going to be available in free agency that we can spend all the money on those guys, which is, not to spoil the later conversation about the deadline, but that's part of the reason why I'm not too interested in the Falcons making trades at this point. But like on the offensive line, I do think it's going to be some challenges ahead for the Falcons if they want to go the veteran route to upgrade that unit.
Yeah, I agree. That was a bunch of very good information, and I do definitely want to talk about the defensive line too, and I think we could sort of use that to transition into the trade deadline talk, because that's sort of relevant to this. But I did want to give Adnan a minute to weigh in. Anything else you wanted to add on the offensive line, Adnan, before we start moving on?
No, just that we definitely are gonna see some changes, just given what Arthur Smith likes to do, given how important the offensive line has always been to the success of the Tennessee Titans in his days over there, how important the offensive line and the defensive line has been to the success of the New Orleans Saints during Terry Fontenot's days over there. We haven't really seen any bit of an overhaul thus far, because we couldn't, because the past two off seasons they've been untangling the cap space mess that was left to them by the previous regime. But now that they have the freedom to pursue their own players on a greater scale, I think that we will see a lot of investment within the trenches this off season and over in the coming months and during the months of the dead period and of the off season. We'll break all of that down eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have all offseason to talk about it too. So we can't, exhaust all of the free agency and draft content, halfway
Gotta
through the
get these
season.
takes off now, Kevin.
Yeah.
Gotta get these takes off
They
now.
do expire. They're exploding takes, so you gotta hurry up and get them out there. But no, I mean I agree with you guys. I think it is I generally think I would prefer to go the get a veteran center route, but the center class in free agency right now is just extremely underwhelming, to say the least. There's nobody I would really be interested in getting, to be completely honest. Now that doesn't mean that no one will ever become available. You wonder with Nick Gates of the Giants, right? Guy that was playing really well, had that debilitating injury. He was just activated off of IR. He is technically a free agent next year. That could be a potential risk reward signing for the Falcons to see if give him a chance to start. That sort of thing. But otherwise, it's just you're just sort of hoping maybe somebody gets cut. I do think that there's actually a couple of interesting centers in the draft. I won't lie and say I've watched center tape. I've been grinding that, center tape 8 weeks into the NFL season. That is absolutely not true. But going off Draft Network, I think there's 3 centers in the top 50 right now of the TDN top 100. So there are going to be some guys that could be a target, on day 2. I don't think there's any necessarily first round type guys, but definitely some guys that are interesting. And then you guys know I love Peter Skoronski, who can play all 5 positions. He played center in high school, so he's also played guard and mostly tackle. But I really like the idea of a Peter Skoronski type. He's sort of similar to an Elgton Jenkins in that he can play all 5 spots, and maybe you have him play guard for a year or something like that, and then eventually he becomes your right tackle or your left tackle of the future. I really like those guys you can sort of plug in wherever you have a hole. It's always nice, even if they're a rookie and they're not a starter. It's they can back up every spot on your offensive line. It's nice. But draft takes are coming later, I promise. Not necessarily right now. All right. Before we get to the trade deadline talk, let me get to a couple more of these donations. I know there's an Aaron-centric one from Jason Gaines saying, Aaron, this show is brought to you by Car Shield. I think I remember that ad read. That's a pretty good one. And he's saying, he thinks you should change the tagline to make the Falcoholic Live your second listen after Locked On Falcons. So I believe I can, answer why that doesn't happen, folks. It's that, I think Aaron may have contractual obligations to plug various shows. Not that those shows are poor quality or that they're not good shows, but there may be, other incentives behind the order of shows plugged on Locked On Falcons.
No comment.
No comment. You got to keep the mystique.
Yeah. Aaron makes the big money out here. He signed a contract like what we saw from Matt Ryan with Locked On. So.
Just add a 1 and 2 zeros to that, and we got a business. How much you get me? $1. Yep. But yeah, guys. No, I appreciate Aaron coming on, and the ad reads if I listen to Locked On Falcons enough, so when I actually have to do an ad read, I'm going to be prepared because I've heard Aaron do it a million times. So, so I'm just going to do the same exact inflection, and then we could just use the ads on both of our channels, and no one will know the difference. But let me get to Patrick here with the $1. Thank you so much, Patrick. He says, quick question. What do you guys think the Falcons will do with Damian Williams once he gets off IR? Do you think he could be a trade candidate, released, or still be on the team? That's an interesting one. I mean, I do think that he'll be back on the team. I think that they liked what he brought. I'm sort of surprised he hasn't been activated yet. I'm guessing that his rib injuries lingered more than maybe we all anticipated. But do you guys have any thoughts on Damian Williams? I mean, I know the emergence of Caleb Huntley has sort of maybe made it a little bit more complicated, but they don't even have 53 players on the roster right now, so clearly they have space to basically bring in anybody they want. What do you guys think about Damian Williams coming back or potentially getting even cut, I guess?
I don't think he'll be cut. I think Huntley's been good, but I think Williams is one of those guys where I think after he comes back, I think they really do want to slot him into that committee role. He was the veteran signing, got hurt in week 1. It is weird to me how we just haven't gotten much of an update about him. I think he was eligible to come off a IR last week. But I think if he is fully healthy and Patterson will hopefully be back after this week, I think they're planning on what they did in week 1, running that 3-man committee of Williams, Algier, and Patterson, with Huntley, going back down. I think we already saw it a little bit with Huntley's carries getting cut down in the past game. I think Algier had 16 carries to Huntley's 6, whereas it was more of a split in the 3 weeks before, where Algier had 36 combined versus Huntley's 34 combined. So yeah, I definitely don't think that Williams is going to be the odd man out in this committee. I think that would probably be Huntley.
Yeah. It's tough, but I mean, I think if anything, like if they really want to keep Huntley and Williams, they just will. They'll just carry 5 running backs, and probably make someone inactive.
But maybe they'll make Felipe Franks inactive finally.
Hey, maybe, but Aaron would never let that happen. No,
Never.
Aaron actually is fine with Felipe Franks being inactive. That's not where Aaron takes umbrage. He takes umbrage with Felipe Franks, the god, being cut, because Kyle Pitts is only getting 3 targets a game. Clearly, we need to upgrade the tight end position, and Felipe Franks is here to do just that. So.
Absolutely. When red zone threat, Felipe Franks. People 5 years from now, when Felipe Franks finally catches that touchdown, you remember this day when I told you guys this was coming.
I'm still my conspiracy theory, and I don't even think it's a conspiracy theory. Arthur Smith is just holding Franks for years for one trick play, one advantageous trick play, where it's gonna work. I hope, but that's gonna be the entire climax of this entire experiment.
Yes, hopefully it comes in a crucial playoff game. Yeah.
What was funny is Franks played 1 snap against the Bengals. It was the opening snap for the Falcons offense, and they designed a shot play on like a wheel route. He went in motion and ran a wheel route, and the play was designed to go to him for a shot play, and Mariota wound up scrambling for like a 5-yard gain or something like that. But Arthur Smith is definitely trolling people by designing all these shot plays for Felipe Franks and never for Kyle Pitts. So
yes,
I find it hilarious.
Yes, I mean, I think it is funny. Maybe the joke's on us because like Mariota wouldn't throw it anyway. But no, to be fair, he has targeted Felipe Franks a few times.
Maybe Arthur Smith turns Felipe Franks into a goal line scavenger, the way the Saints did with Taysom Hill, and that just pisses the fantasy community off.
Oh yes, that's perfect.
It kills Cordero Patterson's value too.
The one reliable fantasy asset, and Marcus Mariota, honestly, most weeks has been like fine as like a quarterback too, if you like really needed a quarterback. But I agree. I think the Felipe Franks vulturing would be the next step in the inevitable. Like, let's just destroy the fantasy value of every single player on the Falcons just because, to really stick it to the fantasy gurus out there. So, I believe that's what my I don't think my bio still says fantasy football guru, so I should be safe.
Next, we'll start carrying 2 kickers too, and then you'll never know which one is going to be active.
You rotate the kickers, keeps them both fresh, and one of them's left-footed and one of them's right-footed, so the defense, the special teams can never get settled, about what side. Yeah,
they trade and who kicks the first field goal, the other kicker kicks the next field goal, and then you can't roster either of them.
Yep, exactly. It's just total chaos. So I like the dark path that this is taking, but hopefully they won't end up actually doing that because I have a feeling that wouldn't work in the real NFL. But what do I know? I'm just an internet GM. All right. So next up, we should probably talk a little bit about the trade deadline. I'm not expecting the Falcons to make any moves. I don't know what you guys think. about the moves. We did see Robert Quinn, of course, go to the Eagles. I didn't really think the Falcons would be like seriously interested in trading for Quinn because of his age and his price tag and all those things. Just didn't seem like the type of move that would really move the needle for them. But I'm curious. Maybe a cornerback. I know people have raised the idea of Greedy Williams and stuff like that. But I'll open the floor to Adnan first on this one. Do you have any moves you think could come at the trade deadline? Do you think it'll be trades, or do you think they might just sign a quarterback off the street?
I would probably guess that they would sign someone off the street. I think one of the tips mentioned Janoris Jenkins as a possibility. One of these older veteran guys, and that's only if those injuries are more long term. I think more than anything, the odds-on favorite thing to happen, and I know this isn't exciting, is nothing.
Yeah.
I think that the team will more than likely just stand pat. I think D. Alford practiced today,
Yep.
and I think he's on the right track to play this week. I don't think we'll see Terrell. Hayward is a few weeks out from coming back from IR. I think they'll just try to sort of weather the storm a little bit, especially knowing that they have 2 games against the Panthers in the next 3 weeks and one against, I think, the Bears. And those are not 3 prolific passing attacks. And I think that the schedule is playing a part into that. But you're facing only one really good passing offense in the next few weeks before theoretically Hayward comes back, and that's the Chargers. So I would say that they probably won't make any moves, and they'll just try to roll with what they have, and they'll just hopefully get organically healthier by the time they face those teams that are more dangerous in the air.
Yeah, I agree. I don't feel like trading picks for rental players like Greedy Williams, or got aging veterans that are still really good, but I know people have floated the Bradley Chubb thing, and it's that's going to be at least a 2nd round pick, if not more. And then you have to turn around and pay him too. So if it's me, I'm probably just taking my chances with who comes available in free agency and not really jumping on any of these trades. Cause I think if the Falcons want to sort of emulate the Ravens style, which is sort of the vibe that I've been getting and sort of what Fontenot has hinted at in the past, they need to keep the draft picks. They need to keep their draft picks and build that way. They've already traded away, their 6th round pick and their 5th round pick, I believe, this year. They do have an extra 4th, extra 7th, but they it's better to not come out trading all these picks away, because I think that impacts your ability to build your team through the draft, which is what I think they would prefer to do. And I think when you've got enough cap space, you can feel confident that you can win bidding wars for guys that you really want, as opposed to feeling like you're really constricted by the cap. So I think I'm more comfortable just sort of waiting it out. But Aaron, where do you stand on the should they make trades? Should they make moves? Where are you on that debate?
Yeah, I don't really see the upside of trading for guys at this point in time, because when you look at most trades, particularly in season trades, it's usually a CJ Henderson trade where basically a new coaching staff is giving up on a high draft pick from the previous regime, like that. Or all the trades are basically teams that have Super Bowl aspirations, acquiring players like last year, obviously with the Rams getting Von Miller, and a couple of other Eagles trades I think happened last year or something like that, or the Chiefs getting Melvin Ingram, and obviously the Eagles getting Robert Quinn this week. And I don't see where the Falcons fit into that category, why the Falcons should be looking for reclamation projects. They're certainly not a Super Bowl team or anything like that. So to me, they have all the money, as you say, Kevin, to spend in free agency. There's no real reason to use up precious draft picks to get guys ahead of free agency. I think Bradley Chubb and Deron Payne have been the names that people have been throwing my way these last couple of weeks. I think they're really good football players, but I don't think they're so exceptional football players that oh man, you got to jump on this opportunity because there's just a rare talent that you're never going to be able to acquire. Like, I would rather have Marcus Davenport and the Falcons' second-round pick than Bradley Chubb. I would rather have Javon Hargrave and the Falcons' third-round pick than Daron Payne. So that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think you sort of take your chance, with free agency. Like, use your money. Don't use your picks and your money. Like, use your pick to get draft picks and use your money to get free agents. I think it's more for the teams trying to push for playoffs, for like serious contention, that need to go assure that they get these guys to get these last pieces, as opposed to the Falcons, who I think are going to continue to be spicy, continue to be frisky and be in it, probably till the end of the season at this rate. But I don't think they need to go all out to try to maximize this year, because like they only have 60% of the salary cap. Like it would be a miracle for them to seriously contend for anything this year. And that doesn't mean they won't make the playoffs or can't win, the wild card game or whatever. But it's like, this team is not like, this team has less than a 1 in 10 chance of going to Buffalo, like winning a game against Buffalo or Kansas City, or probably the Eagles as well in the NFC. Like, I don't think this team has more than a 10% chance of beating any of those teams to win it all, or to get to the Super Bowl. So, and also they could probably would be like underdogs against pretty much every other playoff team in the NFC at this point. So I just don't think it's worth trading away your draft picks. And right now it seems like this regime is doing a pretty good job about utilizing those draft picks. I mean, they haven't hit on every single one, but I think on the whole, they've had a pretty good hit rate. You certainly like how they've developed guys from year 1 to 2. So right now, my plan would be to just give them as many bites at the apple as possible with the draft, and then, utilize your money. Like, if you have guys you really want, then go overpay. Like, that's what you have to do in free agency. Like, if you think Daron Payne is the guy to have next to Grady Jarrett long term, then you overpay him and get him here. You have the money this year to do that and front load that contract if you want. So like, just that would be my preference, as opposed to trading away the capital. But we need to save those draft picks. Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just adding, draft picks are going to be even more precious because of how much money the Falcons going to spend, because they're not going to get any comp picks next year, And so like, using what little draft capital they have to potentially, particularly on day 3, to potentially like trade back or whatever to get 2024 draft picks to compensate for the non-comp picks that they're not going to get next year, So like, I feel like, these draft picks are going to be a lot more precious, particularly because of the Falcons, potentially going on a spending spree this offseason and potentially in future off seasons.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're not looking at getting any comp picks next year. If you do sign a lot of players, maybe you start with the Ravens approach more in like 2024, like sort of re-signing your own guys and not, going out and spending big. But we'll have to see how they want to do it. We haven't really seen what they like an ideal offseason. I think it's like the first time we're going to be able to see how they actually want to do it, when they do have the resources to basically do it however they want. Like, do they want to trade? Do they want to sign guys and do free agency? Do they want to take a more draft-focused approach? Like, they will have all of the options, and we'll actually get, I think, a really good look at, like, in an ideal offseason, what do they actually do? Because so far, they've just gotten crap offseasons back-to-back, where they've had very little flexibility. They've been sort of forced into restructures and extending guys that they may or may not have wanted to. Like, the idea now going forward is that they have the flexibility to do what they want, and we're going to actually get to see, hopefully, their plan get executed the way they want it and hopefully be good. But, we'll see. Let's see. I was going to mention, they need to make sure to hold on those draft picks for Lamar Jackson also, on the off chance, that he breaks free and is available on the trade market. You need all those picks for Lamar, guys. We got Calvin Ridley to send. We know they need receivers, right? But, we gotta keep all those picks for Lamar. So I'm sure the Mariota stands will not be happy to hear me keep talking about Lamar Jackson. But if you're not excited about the idea of Lamar Jackson possibly, even if it's like a 5% chance coming to Atlanta, then I don't know what to say to you, because that's like, that's very exciting. There's no negative baggage attached to it either. So I would be if they're gonna go big for a quarterback, at least go that route, is my opinion. But all right. Let's get to a couple more of these donations. Thanks, everybody. Jason Gaines says, Cowboys DC Tanquin sure does love to pick up his ex-Falcons. Dante Fowler, Demonte Casey, Keanu Neal, CJ Goodwin, Deontay Burton, Ito Smith, and now Kendall Sheffield. I wonder when he's going to sign Marlon Davidson and Tack McKinley. I mean, it could happen. It could happen.
I mean, in fairness, these are guys that he, drafted and worked with. So, I mean, just wait till the Falcons sign Ryan Tannehill next offseason to be the
Right.
long.
There you go. Yeah, that's a really dark timeline. Well, no, it'll be funny because like Ryan Tannehill will reunite with Arthur Smith and will like once again be like Ryan Tannehill from like prime Arthur Smith years, and then it'll just be the cycle repeating all over again. It'll be exactly the same thing. It'll be Mariota here, and then like Tannehill comes in and replaces him in like week 4, and then Tannehill has like great seasons, and it'll just be completely, time is a flat circle. Okay. It's just going to keep repeating itself. As we all know, Ryan Tannehill, leaves a team where he's like, oh, he's okay, but we don't know if he's the future, and then goes to Atlanta and lights it up. So as long as somebody lights it up, I don't care. Just somebody please come in and light it up, at some point. That'd be great. We got Ray Moon with the $5. He's asking, where is Eric? Working for ESPN, so sadly he doesn't get a lot of Wednesday nights off, but he is going to come on sometime. And who's going to be our next guest? Cough, cough, Matt Ryan. I'm going to get Evan right on that for you, Ray. We'll get Evan on that.
He's got some free time.
He does, unfortunately, for Matt. But then we got Jason Gaines to $2. Says, it's too bad the Falcons didn't do an onside kick against Hayden Hurst last week. We know he would have just watched the ball spin, and we would have gotten to recover the onside kick. By the way, we also need to make sure to do that against the Vikings because Ben Kotwica is on their staff. Yeah. Yep. So, they missed a golden opportunity, Jason. I feel like if they had an opportunity to kick an onside kick and still be in the game, I think that we would have seen they would have gone right at Hayden Hurst. I wonder if Hayden Hurst is even on their like hands team on the onside kick, like, or if they just were like, we're not gonna even put you, we're not even gonna put you in that situation. So, all right. Well, I'm trying to remember if there's anything else we need to cover. We should talk about the Matt Ryan thing. Obviously, sad for Ryan, who's been benched by the Colts, who I think are basically low-key tanking with this move. Inserting Sam Ehlinger. Matt was getting absolutely clobbered behind the Colts offensive line. Hadn't had the start that I think many were hoping for. But again, I think it was sort of like we had seen some signs of life. Like there had been a couple of good games in there recently. And then this last week obviously was not great against the Titans. But might be the end for Ryan as an NFL starter. Very inauspicious, sadly, end for him. Adnan, I'll let you get the first crack at it. Anything you want to say about Ryan, potentially seeing his last NFL start?
It is very sad, to be honest, because, it's difficult for athletes in general to kind of finish on top. And I'm not saying that, Matt Ryan was on top or that he should have retired or anything. He's making really good money right now. But just, in general, our favorite athletes and the superstar athletes in their prime that we, sometimes even grow up watching, they're closing out their career in a whimper, so to speak. Like we saw it with Peyton Manning. Sure, the Broncos won the Super Bowl, but they won it despite him. We saw Manning benched in his last season in Denver, and he came back and he became the starter, led the league in picks, I think. We're sort of seeing it a little bit with Tom Brady struggling a lot this year, whereas he could have sort of gone out on top last year, but he decided to spite Adam Schefter and come back just because of Adam Schefter's report. I'm kidding. No, I'm not starting that rumor. But yeah, just in general, it's sad to sort of see Ryan fall off a cliff a little bit with his play this year. And I know that it wasn't all his fault in Indianapolis. The offensive line looks really bad over there. The run game was not looking good. The defense was okay. But the Colts really, I think Frank Reich himself said that the Colts weren't holding up their end of the bargain with Matt Ryan, or if it wasn't Reich, it was someone who said that over in Indianapolis, that they weren't giving him the offensive line or the run game that he thought he was getting. And on top of that, Ryan has made some poor decisions. He has 11 fumbles this year, which leads the league, and which would be, I think, 11's a lot for a full season.
Yeah.
He's, I think, one of the league leaders in interceptions. Um, he didn't look good, and the fact that they're going to Sam Ellinger, who was a sixth round rookie last year, really says a lot. Despite the fact that they're still in the hunt, they're at 500 exactly, 3-3-1. But yeah, it's hard to watch. It's hard. It'll be hard to watch Matt Ryan, holding a clipboard on the sidelines if he is the backup. I don't know if they announce that Nick Foles will remain the backup all season. But overall, if we're looking at it from just an objective Falcons perspective, the Falcons made out well with that trade of getting rid of the entire cap space starting next offseason. Got some draft compensation as well, but it just sucks to see, because I know we were all rooting for Matt Ryan.
Yeah, very sad to see. Aaron, anything else you want to add on the sad end potentially to Matt Ryan's era in Indianapolis?
I'm laughing because when you say sad, I'm just thinking of Donald Trump tweets.
Sad.
But yeah, it was tough to see it all kind of just fall apart for Indianapolis, because we all sat there back in March being like, oh man, like he's like, he doesn't really have to do anything. He can just basically hand the ball off to Jonathan Taylor, and that offensive line will give him protection. They have a pretty good defense. He'll just basically have to manage the game, and they should be able to cakewalk their way to a winning record and a pretty soft AFC South as all things looked. And none of those predictions came true, and so that's what's so odd about it, that like it's just nothing. It just seemed like all the bad luck, if you want to call it that, went in that direction towards the Colts, where nothing went right for that football team. And obviously, Matt Ryan has not played particularly well. It did feel like, because you go back when they had Phillip Rivers, they kind of started that season like 2-4, I think it was. And then they sort of got things going, and he had a good game the other week, much to my chagrin, because I had money on the other team. I think it was the Jaguars. And like, you were like, okay, this is the thing that, this is going to be the thing that gets this going and gets some momentum. And they'll be back in the thick of it by year's end. And then, he gets hurt, and now the Colts are just basically like, we're giving up on the season by going with Sam Ellinger, although they say all the things, and given how this season has gone, and Geno Smith is basically a shoo-in to get comeback player of the year at this point in time. At this point, maybe Sam Ellinger is actually good, and then we'll just sit here and we'll just be baffled on, no one would have thought Russell Wilson would fall on his face. Matt Ryan would fall on his face. People have been predicting Tom Brady's downfall for like 12 years, and it hasn't happened yet.
Eventually, they're going to be right. Yeah.
Eventually, yeah. And so it's just, and then Geno Smith and Cooper Rush are the breakout stars of
Geno
2022.
Smith, baby. Yeah.
It's been a weird year for quarterbers.
It's been such a strange season.
Well, like,
it really has.
Obviously, Allen and Mahomes are at the top of the mountain, as everyone expected. Jalen Hurts has been really good. And then, like, after those guys, like, Geno Smith has been much better than, like, expected. But I don't think there's been any quarterback playing at a really elite level other than the first three guys that I mentioned this year.
Lamar had a run, but he seems to have cooled off a little bit the last
few weeks.
Yeah.
Just got to help. You got to keep on that trajectory to drive down that trade price. I see what you're doing, Lamar. It's very smart. I approve. No, I mean, I've asked like on other people before, but Aaron, what do you think actually about that possibility? Like very long term, sort of pegging it as like, do you think it's something that's even within the realm of the reasonable, or is it like a dart throw, from 100 feet? Like, does it even make sense for this team? What do you think about that? Very at this point, very far away potential possibility of Lamar Jackson somehow finding his way into Atlanta.
I don't see it happening. I just don't see any chance that Baltimore lets him go.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
sort of what I think. Yeah.
100%. They can only franchise tag him twice.
Yeah.
You know, well, one of those will be this offseason. That they don't want to take that risk. He's coming. He's coming home.
If he does leave, I think there's a chance that it could be Atlanta that really goes the hardest for him. But I agree with you that like the chance of him actually getting out of Baltimore, despite
100%.
It's weird to me because like part of me sits here and thinks the only reason he hasn't signed a contract with them yet is because he doesn't have an agent, and he just basically just doesn't really care that much. And there's been all these reports that say he doesn't care about playing on the franchise tag, unlike other quarterbacks where, you know, that was kind of the sticking point for Kyler Murray. He was just like, I don't want, you know, I want financial security now. And that led to that situation. And Lamar's just like, whatever, you know, the deal will get done when it gets done. And so you do wonder if them tagging him like just kind of drags out that whole situation for a couple of years. But I would hope, you know, if Lamar is tagged in 2023 and then 2024, which should keep him in Baltimore for the next 2 years, I would hope the Falcons have found their quarterback solution by then so that we're not still talking about getting Lamar Jackson in 2025 when he's finally available.
What do you mean? Ryan Tannehill's 2-year contract with the Falcons will be running out by then. It'll be perfect.
Yep.
I just, you know, I feel like either Desmond Ridder will be a good guy or we'll realize he's not. And then I don't know, Caleb Williams or Arch Manning or Quinn Ewer or whoever that next, you know, superstar is by the time we get
it.
Yeah, so
let's not. How about we don't do that? But yeah, no. I mean, I do want because right now I really feel like the winds are shifting to where like they're not really gonna go after a quarterback in 2023. At this point, I would be surprised if they did. Now, if we do see Ridder and Ridder's like, oh, this is disaster, then it's like, okay, well, maybe the chances of that happening go up a lot. But I feel like they'll at least
Mariota set the bar so low, though. It's just like
that's true.
Like it's like I was thinking about this earlier today.
Yeah.
if Ridder comes in and just plays exactly the same as Mariota, we'll be like, oh, you know, like would we look at that and be like, that works for me. I can work with that.
Maybe that was all part of Arthur Smith's plan. You know, he's gonna just never pass with Mariota, and then no matter what Ridder does, you know, as long as it's not just like, you know, Nate Peterman 5 interceptions in his first game, the fan base will completely rally behind him.
It's all part of the plan.
Yep. Oh man.
Yeah, if you listen to us, Arthur Smith has been playing a lot of 4D chess with a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, big time. Wow. So much so. All right, well, we're gonna go ahead and wrap up here. First of all, we're gonna get to this poll. The results are 91% believe that George Costanza has donated over $1,000. So I'm gonna give you guys the scoop. He's
now probably donated 2,000 plus. Like, no way, it's only $1,000.
I'm gonna tell you guys right now what it is that we got. All right, top all time. George Costanza has donated $1,636 on a total of 284 donations. George,
284, not 283.
No, 208. Yeah. Thankfully, I think he did 2 tonight to really make sure that that didn't happen. That would have been really funny, though. It did get to 284 before I read it off. So
shout out to George.
Yeah, big time shout out to George
for all of the support over the years.
And I will give the top 5 as well to give everyone their shout out. Corey Carter is in second. He's donated $556 on 112 donations. So Corey crushing it as well. Thank you so much, Corey. We got Ken Ballard in third with $260 on 8 donations. So Ken's big spender on his donations. Thank you so much, Ken. We got Ray Moon, who is in here as well tonight, in fourth place at $259 on 42 donations. And then in fifth, we got Gary Stafford with $205 on 19 donations. So guys, thank you all so much. We really do appreciate that. And then I got to get to George's World Series donation for Adnan here. So he says, okay, Adnan, on one hand, if we would have Dusty Baker winning his first World Series as a manager, but then that would mean the Astros win and they're cheaters and deserved a 5-year ban from the postseason. But I cannot root for the Phillies. I won't, never, ever, ever. So Where do you lean on that?
I'm not rooting for the NL East team, and I hate everything about Philadelphia sports. And Philly fans deserve to suffer in misery. Also, they're direct division rival of the Braves, so I'm rooting for an Astros sweep. I hope that they bang the trash cans in this World Series.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, guys, thank you all so much for tuning in to the show tonight. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And if you don't mind, if you're listening to this on the audio version, leaving us a 5-star review. We really appreciate that. We lost our perfect 5 stars. I think we had 5 stars for a while on Spotify. Now it's 4.9. So shout out to whoever took us down from there. But I feel like 5 stars. It feels like a little too perfect because there was like 80 reviews. So like first of all, shout out to you guys for like giving that many 5-star reviews. But like I feel like when it's 4.9, people are like, oh, these are like legit because like it's not possible that everyone could love the show. So I think 4.9 makes it feel more legit, like we didn't just buy a bunch of 5-star reviews or something, which we would never do, of course. That's ridiculous. The mere suggestion of such a thing.
We didn't do that.
We definitely did not do that. But
okay, good.
Yeah, no. I'm sure you could. That's probably a thing. But
guys, the Falcoholic does not pay us enough to be spending money on.
Yeah, no.
Reviews.
No.
We don't make that much money.
We do not. Yeah. People I mention this think that I do for some reason. They're like, "Oh, well, if you hate the team so much, you're just here for the money." It's, no,
no.
I wish.
Yeah, that would be nice. It would be nice if I could Scrooge McDuck my way into like a money pit after every game. When they played poorly and make myself feel better, but that does not happen, unfortunately. But guys, we do appreciate that. Check us out on
penny.
There you go. Yeah, that's our take for tonight. Yeah. Guys, thank you so much. If you want to support the show on a monthly basis, check us out on patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. You can follow the show at Falcoholic Live. You can also follow our special guest. He is Aaron Freeman at FalcFans, host of the Locked On Falcons podcast. Your second listen of the day after checking out Falcoholic Live. Aaron, anything else you'd like to plug?
No, if people want to join the Locked On Falcons Discord, they can do so. There's a pinned tweet at the top of my Twitter at FalcFans. And the reason you would do that is because every Saturday we do a little symposium type thing and talk about the upcoming game. It's basically a Twitter space. So if you're bored Saturday afternoon at 3:00, if you're over Georgia beating the brakes off of whoever they're playing this weekend with Florida, hang out or whatever. I don't know. That's what I'm plugging.
Yeah, absolutely. Discords are fun. We have a Falcoholic one as well, so that it's in the show description if anyone's interested in that. But you can be in an unlimited number of Discord servers, so definitely check Aaron's out as well. Thanks again for coming on, Aaron. Appreciate you making the time. Technically, I think you're maybe contractually obligated now that you actually work for the Falcoholic to come here from time to time. But we sort of downplay that and make it seem like you actually like us. So
yes. That's the reason.
Yeah. Yep. Also with us tonight, my co-host Adnan Ikic. He's at Say Which Way. Adnan, anything you're working on you'd like to plug?
Yeah, what if the Falcons win or lose? And series history is coming this weekend, as it does every weekend. Spoiler alert for the Panthers: the Falcons have beaten them a lot in their history. A lot.
Yeah. The Falcons better win this game, and I will be breaking it down with a special guest on the Friday game previews. You guys can look for that Friday morning, and I will break that game in more detail. And then, of course, you can check us out on our post-game show immediately following the game on Sunday. Post-game's now going to have Alan Sturk in here for all the post-game shows, and probably, maybe other people if they win. I find that when we win, more people are trying to get into the post-game shows. But now at least I've, hooked Alan so that he has to come no matter what, even if
I think I've only come for losses to the post.
I know, yeah, it's been bad luck. I think Dave's come on a couple times when they win, because that's Dave's purview as editor-in-chief. He can choose when he wants to make his face known to the people. But
yeah, he wants the people to be conditioned to when they're happy they see Dave.
Yes, that's very smart.
When they're very angry they see me.
I was wondering why he hired that psychoanalysis consultant for the site. Now I think I'm starting to figure it out. So,
well, I balance things out by bringing him on Locked On Falcons only after losses. So
There you go. Yeah. All things
working
are
against it.
perfectly balanced as all things should be. So, all right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in tonight. We will see you guys next time on the Falcoholic Live. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin on the Twitter. We'll talk to you guys next time. Have a great night, folks.